Okay, right. So, welcome back to Buddhist Mind Science. And so, last week we had quite a bit of discussion about the mind and the way that the mind can become clouded and the possibility of whether we can uncloud or unstain the mind. So, were you all here for last week's class? I can't remember. I know many of you were. No, some of you weren't. That's okay. No worries. Um, all right. So I guess maybe what we can start off with is really having a thought as to, I mean, we've all come together here when we listen to any explanations from the Buddhist perspective, or generally any kind of explanations which are about increasing our well-being. What we're looking for essentially is to increase our happiness and decrease our problems, right? Improving our ability to deal with the challenges that life throws at us in some way. So then I guess the question that we could ask is, what is that happiness that we're really searching for? So what are your ideas about what is the happiness that you're searching for? If you put it in your own words, I know if you've done a bit of study of Buddhism, of course, you'll have a bit more of a grasp on the terminology we use. But, just to put it in your own words, what would you say, Christine?
From a worldly perspective, I would say just having your to be happy to have your needs met, not having to worry about money. To have enough. I mean, not being rich or anything, just have enough vibe. And I think just being content. And everybody being healthy. This is from a worldly perspective. You know, and
Mm.
from from a Buddhist perspective, it'd be nice to have a content mind without all the craving. Like what you want something, you don't know what you want today. It's like why? It's like just have this craving thing going. It's like I don't want anything really. It's like it's very weird. It's like yeah, it's like get rid of that that thing in the desire realm, the constant craving. You really don't want something, need something. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think those two work very well together, actually. You can say from a
Mhm.
worldly perspective, having that contentment, having that satisfaction, having that peace of mind, isn't it? When we
Mhm.
think about contentment, it's really about having that peace of mind, that stability of mind where we're not buffeted here and there. Yeah. And when you think about it, as you're saying, from the Buddhist perspective, to not have that craving of always wanting this, going for that, I need the other thing. This one's not good enough. It's not doing it for me now. Right. So that really acts as an obstacle to developing that contentment.
Oh, and one other thing is not having what you don't want. To me, that's the biggest thing of the sufferings is getting what you don't want. I'm okay with not getting what I want because that's fine. Getting what you don't want, that's where problems come in. People getting sick, cars breaking, all that stuff. That's the one I don't like. True.
Yeah. But interestingly, these are two sort of sides of the same coin, we can say, in fact. So that, you can say you're okay with getting not getting what you
Uh,
do want, but
yeah.
you struggle with getting what you don't want, right?
I mean, I accept it, but I'd rather not have it. Yeah. I'm used
Yeah.
to getting not getting what I want. That's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially once we do a bit of study, or even if you just like come to understand your mind more, you
Mhm.
can see how there is this craving that arises in your mind. It's like, I really want that thing, and
Mhm.
obviously this time I'm not going to get it. And you can kind of work to come to terms with that. You can see how that strong grasping for it creates that, what do we call it? That sort of like busyness of the mind that
Yeah.
interferes with our mental stability.
Mhm.
But actually, when we look at that, that's essentially a type of craving, isn't it? It's like, I really want that thing. When we look at the um, being unhappy with the things that we get that we don't want, that is in actual fact also a type of craving. We usually don't
Yeah.
identify it as a type of craving, but it also is a type of craving.
I can
It's a
see that.
craving to be separated from that thing.
I think mine is because a lot of my life I got big what I don't want. That's why big things. But it's okay. I'm okay now. It's not. I accept it more. I don't get I don't get as upset or get as stressed out. It's just like, okay, this happened. I can deal with it, especially since practicing Buddhism. You know, so and
Yeah.
I and I and my son he said he doesn't study and he gets upset and like his car broke down. Had a problem with his car. I said, well, at least you have money and somebody to fix it for you. My husband, we did have the money or somebody to fix it. That was a big stressor in my early life. So yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
So you find sort of like
everything.
ways to work around it in terms of your
Mhm.
thinking, so to reduce that,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, the stress that it
yeah,
causes you.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. The Buddhism has helped out. Practicing Buddhism has helped out a lot. That more of a calm
Yeah.
mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So how about anybody else? Do you have ideas of like for you what that happiness is that you're searching for, that you're really, hopeful for?
Well, not to be semantical about it, but what I'm coming to realize is happiness is contingent upon something. As the lady said, money, this, the happy. Oh, you make me so happy. You tell somebody, oh, I got my new car. I'm so happy. It's a thing. It's something. And the car gets old, and sometimes she leaves you. But now joy. Ah, see, joy is something totally different. It's for the experience, and then contentment, peace. I'm not going to get that through those things. It's inside of me. If I just quiet my brain down enough and let my heart reason for me without the noisiness of the thoughts and the intellect and the ego. And then sometimes I say, well, wow, I got everything to be joyful for. There are those moments. And there's other things happening too, but I rather focus on the joyousness because that diminishes the rest of the stuff that life brings.
Okay, so that's a lot that you mentioned in there, Stefan. So would you say that the happiness, therefore, is really that joy that you're seeking, that mental experience that you feel like you can generate from within without necessarily relying on external things, whether you get what you want or you don't get what you want, or, if you have money, you don't have money. You're talking more about that joy that you can generate within your mind through your own mental training, would you say?
Well, when I share joy, it's not of my mind, it's of my heart. It's something more on a emotional and intuitive, deeper within the being than my thought process and the way my mind works. It just makes so much noise. And why does it take me so long to explain something? Because I don't even understand it. Things like that. It's usually very few say less and mean more, mean what I say what I mean, do what I say what I do. It cuts it right to the chase, but it's joy is totally separate because like I'm just trying to make that distinction because the happiness is as I see it, I've been very happy and then things shift. But joy is it's almost like they say contentment and is being grateful for what you got. It's when you just say, what I have. Because when I bring the ruler out, I'm always short. For some reason, I bring the ruler, I start adding and counting. Now all my dreams came true. Now my mind is getting ready to make some new dreams. They had a thing in who are the happiest people in the world. Denmark was the won the prize, and they asked the people. The lady said, "Well, we lower our expectations and we celebrate." Here in America, it's the next thing. Now how can I become more shiny? But the
Yeah,
light within us is brilliant.
it's the constant grasping, really, is essentially, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's what creates that mental dissonance, we can say, that we experience constantly. And that's not to say that people in countries like Denmark also won't experience that as well, but maybe at a different level. And in other countries where there is this perhaps more societal push to grasp for the next thing, to go for the next better thing. You can't be content with the one that you have. You need to go higher. You need to go bigger. You need to go brighter, right? So with that societal push, that kind of encourages our grasping, our attachment, our craving to become more and more pronounced, and that's where we get that dissonance within the mind.
Yeah. Universal health care does help. They have that. We get sick worrying about getting sick. And if you buy a Ferrari for $200,000, you got to pay twice as much, in taxes. So it is geared to, hey, get off of the carrot, and let's just get along here, and be happy, be joyous. So it is something too societal. But then there's love and other things, the birds and the bees, and I'm sure all hearts have those ups and downs.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is there is also this theme that matches with what Christine said about this contentment. And, there is definitely a joy that can arise from having that contentment where we are reducing down our disturbances of mind. Last week, when we were talking about those afflictions like attachment and anger and pride and jealousy, how these are things that create disturbance in the mind. By their very nature, they create disturbance. And we tend to contribute to all of those by our way of thinking. So again, Stefan, you were talking about that busyness of the thought processes and going beyond the thought processes. So that if we have an unhelpful way of thinking, maybe it's like rumination, focusing on the negative, or maybe it's that way of thinking that's like, I need the next thing, I need the next better thing. This one I've got is not good enough. So those thought processes definitely can contribute to those disturbing states of mind that arise for us, like anger, like attachment, craving, grasping, all of these things. Yeah. We can also say, though, that there are thought processes that we can implement that actually will help to reduce the disturbances. So we wouldn't say that like thought in and of itself, conceptualization in and of itself is a negative thing, is something that's going to disturb our mind. Because you can likewise utilize a positive way of thinking, and you're thinking, for instance, about generating contentment, like, Christine and Stefan, you both mentioned, reflecting on the things that you do have, the qualities that already are at your disposal, the things that you're grateful for. So that way of thinking actually can help bring the mind to a more focused, stable way of being, and it reduces the disturbances because that way of thinking actually accords with reality. It's when we have the way of thinking that does not accord with reality, that's always hoping for the next best thing that will make my life perfect. That way of thinking definitely creates that gap between expectation and reality. Because so far, amongst all the things that we've acquired in our life, has any one of them remained absolutely perfect and given us perfect happiness and contentment? I'd say probably clearly not, because you probably wouldn't feel like, there's any point in coming to this class if you felt like, life was perfect and, you're completely content at this point, right? You'd be like, oh, I don't need to listen to anybody else because I've got it completely sorted in my life. So none of the things we've acquired so far have brought us that perfect contentment, perfect happiness. So this is the issue, is that our incorrect ways of thinking, they have our expectations up here and reality is here. So there are some things, there are things in life that can bring us benefit, sure. But what's going to bring us the proper contentment, which is what I heard both of you say, was like contentment, that is really where we find happiness, where we find joy. So when we reduce those disturbances, that's where we find the joy. That's where we find the happiness that we're seeking. So in order to do that, we have to work within. We can't rely on these external things to provide that for us, if that's what we're seeking. So how about the rest of you? Would you say that that rings true for you as well? Yeah. Okay. So last week we also talked a little bit about this idea of dissatisfaction, which comes in relation to this discrepancy between where we hope, what we hope from things and what they can actually give us. And in dependence upon that discrepancy, then we end up with this sense of dissatisfaction. And with that dissatisfaction, again, we grasp for something to fill the gap, to plug the hole in the happiness that we really want. But in actual fact, we have to turn inwards and look at the mind and see how we can allow we could say, shining of the mind to light come through, come from behind the clouds of those disturbances of mind. So in this course, what we're talking about, or what this particular module is dealing with, is like the presentation from a Buddhist perspective of a pathway that can lead us to that point where we reduce the clouds, the afflictions, attachment, the craving, grasping, the anger, the pride, the jealousy, all of those things that allow this natural quality of mind to shine through. And the path that is presented here specifically is what is called the 3 higher trainings. So probably some of you have heard about these 3 higher trainings before. But anyway, we'll go in. If you haven't heard about them, it's no problem at all. And by the way, Stefan, I haven't forgotten about the question you asked last week. I'm still planning to address it. Might come a little bit later down the track, I'm thinking, because it's related to something that we talk about, in fact, in the 4th class, but we'll see how we go. Yeah. Okay, so with this presentation of the 3 high trainings, what we're looking to do, as I said before, as first we're looking to reduce those clouds that obscure the mind, and then find a way to gain that real stability in mind that allows us to see things as they actually are, to contact reality as it actually is. That's the process. Is it very noisy for you? There's a bit of noise outside my room. Can you hear it? Okay, excellent. So before we start there, I thought we might go with one of the meditations from the course manual, which is really looking at this inner satisfaction that we can develop. So if you want to just get your body comfortable to start with, so sitting so that your back is straight, but not too rigid, just relaxed but straight. And allowing the mind to just rest within the body. Take a few deep breaths. As you breathe out, letting go of any tension within your body and within your mind. Releasing all of that tension from the day. Allowing the mind to really relax into the body. Feeling a sensation of solidity. warmth or coolness against your skin. And bringing the awareness, the inhalation and exhalation of your breath. Just noticing the sensation as you breathe in and out from your nostrils. The mind wanders away, just bringing it gently back, placing it on that sensation, inhalation and exhalation. And I'll bring to mind a particular time, particular moment when you felt very satisfied, fulfilled or content. A time when you just felt that sense of freedom within your mind, peace. So not focusing so much on the object that you felt that in relation to, but just recalling, trying to bring to mind that experience of contentment. Notice turning that experience over in your mind. Notice how there is no strong sense of clinging, craving, just this sense of peace, satisfaction. And if you notice yourself clinging to that sensation, that feeling, try to let go of that attachment. Just focus on the feeling. An equanimous, open mind. You'll have a sense of proper relaxation in that moment. You're grasping for more. And pushing away. Through this, we can see that inner satisfaction is right within our grasp. It's within our own inner potential, not depending upon external conditions. See the qualities that you don't have to rely on anything external for. You can contact this whenever you want. Regardless of what happens around you. There's this potential within you, inner satisfaction, true relaxation. Taking a few moments to reflect on that. And imagine yourself sharing that experience with all other beings. Sharing this experience of contentment, peace of mind. Imagine that their minds become peaceful, not craving and grasping. And developing the wish, may I be able to bring this about. Okay, so opening your eyes. So when you did that meditation, did you manage to generate that sense of contentment within your mind? Did you notice like a reduction in the pulling that comes with the, that constant grasping for something better, something more, or the pushing away of that thing I don't like? No?
I noticed when you were speaking and I was in that zone of that experience, and it was still in thinking because it was looking at the circumstances and the particulars and associating that with the whole picture. It then worked towards eliminating the outside things, the context outwardly, and then settled in. It was a whole nother realm within that had nothing to do with the things, more so just the experience.
That's right. Yeah. So the idea, obviously, for us, where we're at the moment, is that in generating that sense of contentment and satisfaction, we have to recall a time where we were, in a particular situation and we had that sense of satisfaction or that sense of contentment. But what we're trying to do, or what this meditation is trying to do, is to just get us to contact that experience itself without focusing on the external conditions that we encountered when it came to our mind, So it might be like, for instance, you're on holiday, you're lying on the beach, and it's a beautiful sunny day, and there's just that sense of like there's nothing you have to do specifically. There's no demands on your time. It's your time to just essentially relax, right? So at that time, all the various causes and conditions have come together that have allowed your mind to get into that space of relaxation and contentment. So for us, we're kind of more rely on those external conditions. But by doing this meditation, where you're just focusing on the experience, you can see that actually you can bring that sense to your mind without having to experience those external conditions through a process. And it does involve a bit of thinking, right? So thinking is not a bad thing, but you get to a point where you're just focusing on that experience to see what it's like to have a time when your mind is clear, is stable, is not buffeted around by the afflictions. Because this is what we're aiming towards, but we want to be able to cultivate that without relying on any kind of external circumstance. So that even when you're incredibly busy at work, or when you're having very difficult time with your family, for instance, you can recall that sense of contentment, satisfaction through your own power, essentially. That's what we're getting at. So it's just trying to bring to mind that experience so you know what you're aiming for, essentially. How about everybody else? Do you have anything else you'd like to add? It's probably quite late for you guys over there. So I feel like I'm kind of, asking you to get involved and you're like, I'm getting ready for bed. What do you do? Why do I have to talk? No? Okay, that's all right. I shall continue on talking then. That's all right. All right. So moving on to this next section, which is about the three higher trainings. All right. So when we look at the presentation of these three higher trainings from a Buddhist perspective, so to just introduce them to start with, we've got the higher training in ethics, higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. Now, probably most of us will understand already what these last two refer to. Basically, concentration is going to refer to like focusing the mind. Wisdom is about really developing that clarity of mind that understands reality, that is not subject to delusions, or overcoming the ignorance that lies at the root of all these other problems that we have within our ways of thinking. But when it comes to ethics, I think many people have different ideas as to what ethics actually constitutes. So, can I ask you guys to give me an idea of what you think ethics or what ethics means to you? Christine?
It means not engaging the 10 non-virtuous actions, killing, stealing, naming them all, avoid sexual conduct, lying, vice speech, harsh speech, idle talk, coveting, malice, and wrong views. But I also, let me see, I think it's not just that, but acting in ways that show kindness and not being, how do you say this? It's like ethics and there's the other, what's the word I'm looking for? I my mind. It's just being kind and not trying to uh, get something out of another person. Not just thinking about yourself, not having a self-centered thought. You know, that's to me that kind of ethics. Having good morality or morals and like that. Of course, I can't say the words I'm wanting right now, but yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
like
from what you're saying, we've got like both the typical Buddhist presentation where you say, the abandoning the 10 non-virtues, which we will talk about. But also you're saying actually there's also this idea of proactive behavior in the sense of what you cultivate in relation to others. So that kindness, that compassion, these kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very nice explanation. So how about everybody else? So I don't know all of you, I can't see all of your faces, so I'm not sure. But like Cynthia, for instance, what would be your idea of ethics? Would you have the same idea as Christine?
Yeah, I think same with the 10 afflictions, but also for me, I mean, me personally, I look at trying to keep my integrity. So that's the word that I always think of, is, when no one's looking, are you able, right? So are you able to still do the things that keep you honest and keep you, uh, not stealing, not so those things that that uh, that you, whether someone's looking or not, you're able to keep consistent with your character. That's how I look at it.
So acting in a way that's concordant with your particular set of values of what you think is a good way to behave as opposed to a negative or an unhelpful way to behave.
Yes, and now that I'm in Buddhism, I've kind of qualified that to be in a way that does not cause suffering, right? So if that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a discussion that I think in general in the world is had as to like what constitutes a set of ethics, and you'll find ethics is different depending upon the group that it's related to. You can have legal ethics, you can have medical ethics. There's ethics around, animal care, all these different types of ethical codes of conduct. When we look at it from the Buddhist point of view, a set of ethics or a code of conduct that constitutes ethics really is based on non-harmfulness. So it's non-harmfulness in relation to yourself, and it's non-harmfulness in relation to others. And then it's acting in accordance with that, particular code or those values that we hold as being important. So why do we hold it to be important to practice non-harmfulness in relation to ourselves and relation to others? I mean, essentially, it's because what we're seeking is happiness. We're seeking this state of contentment. We're seeking this state where we're not subject to suffering, and also the same for others. Because it's in that's our goal. That's in fact everybody's goal in life, is to find that kind of unchanging, proper happiness. And that's not something that's achievable if you have a mind that is very disturbed. So if you have a mind that's very disturbed, what that means is that, as we just looked at with that meditation, we can see that when the mind is not buffeted by those disturbing factors like anger and attachment and so forth, then our mind becomes quite calm and peaceful, and it will be the same for others. So therefore, I just lost my train of thought. Isn't that terrible? I think that's a middle-aged thing. So sometimes it's like I'm on the train, my thoughts going in one direction, and then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, where does it go? It just disappears.
I find that when that happens to me, to invite my heart in. It's that my mind is moving and it's on a roll there, but then it drops off because there's a part of me that's not incorporated with it, which creates more of a flow. The mind, I tell you, the mind, I really got to watch out for my mind.
Well, yes, I mean it's quite true what you say. Also, I feel like the middle-aged memory loss plays a role in there as well. So sometimes I don't feel like I had these problems so much when I was younger. But this is the nature of having this kind of body, isn't it? Sometimes we have problems
Mm.
with it. It gets older, you get more and more memory loss as you go along, unfortunately.
Long
That's
as you don't forget me.
Oh no,
Like
we have to.
morals is the big thing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Morals
Well,
within
this
the
is a.
ethics. It's
Mm.
moral to have that moral. I remember in one particular Buddhism, I think it was the Pure Land, said moral dread, to dread being immoral. So it creates something within you that you're really conscious of, what am I doing? Which would tend to be that you would be ethical, because ethical is fairness. It's doing the right thing because it's the right thing and not because it's gain or loss motivated, that I would say for myself.
Yeah, yeah. So I think this is like a general, a theme generally that I think many of us would accept, is that there is this idea with ethics or morality where it is about, there's a sense of at least fundamentally not doing harm. And then if we build on that to actually do benefit,
Mm.
yeah. So that would be like our sort of value system that underpins ethics or morality. So then there's this interesting, I think, a bit of conundrum with, in terms of our, perhaps like we can say, a Western approach to life, and then how we fit the notion of ethics or morality together with that. Because with our sort of Western approach to life, there's very much this idea of like, personal freedom, personal independence. I should be able to do whatever I want to do. I should be able to say whatever I want to say, freedom of speech, I mean, to an extent, freedom of action, freedom of thought. Yes, that's something that we
Mm.
also hold as important and valuable within our society. And when you have restriction on those things, then we feel like we don't have freedom, we don't have independence. So the issue then arises is when it comes to our mind, do we therefore say that we should just let our mind go wherever it wants to go? I'm entitled to have freedom of, well, everybody's entitled to have freedom of thought, but is that a beneficial thing to put no kind of constraints on the way that you think? to make no attempt to direct the mind. Just allow it to go, you know. If it wants to get angry, it can get angry. If it wants to be attached, to let it be attached. You know, do we apply that idea of freedom of thought to our minds in that sense? Christine, I can see you saying definitely no. Why not?
Well, because you do that, you're gonna end up acting on it. You know, that anger, um, you let your anger get in your mind and it builds up, and you're eventually going to act on the anger, and that's that's kind of, I think, create more non-virtue. I was going to say each morning we do a meditation across the avenue because we do these motivations of not harming others with our body, speech, and mind, benefiting as much as we are able, and do motivation of bodhicitta. Did you hear me?
Sorry, I missed the last bit.
Oh, the back. I said it was each morning we did motivation of not harming any sentient being with our body, speech, and mind, benefiting as much as we are able, and doing this with a motivation of bodhicitta. That's our motivations every morning.
Yeah, excellent motivation to start the
Yeah,
day with. Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. You're totally right, right? So what we already have is we already have great habituation, great familiarization with things like anger and with things like attachment. I'm talking about that attachment where we, you know, it's like that craving for something that you don't have, craving to be separated from the things that you don't like, this constant pushing and pulling that moves your mind like here, there, you know, you have no sense of contentment because you're always striving for that other thing, you know, this one's not enough, I need more, like that. So we already have so much habituation and familiarization with those that if we just let our mind go where it will, that's where it will go. We don't have a lot of familiarization or habituation with qualities like compassion and loving kindness. Those are things that we really have to put a lot of effort into. Also, we can say we don't have great familiarity even just with like mental focus, mental balance, that like single pointed focus of mind, which is also, you know, a great tool for reducing those disturbances of mind. So those are things we actually have to cultivate within. And as you say, Christine, if you allow those ways of thinking that we're predominantly habituated with to just have free reign in our minds, then our body and our speech will act on the basis of those. So our speech will become negative. Our physical actions will become negative. And as a result of that, we create problems for ourselves. We create problems for others. We create conflict within our relationships with others. And generally, we get further and further away from our goal of stable, lasting happiness, stable, lasting contentment. And if we are somebody who has that sense of, you know, some kind of like a moral compass in terms of, you know, what is a good way to behave and what is a negative way to behave, chances are we'll end up also with quite a lot of regret because we'll have behaved in a way that does not accord with our, you know, our value system. So what ethics does is essentially, from we're saying is ethics, it creates some boundaries. So it can create some boundaries to our physical and verbal actions. And it also starts to create some, or helps us to set some boundaries to what's going on mentally within ourselves. So there's a PowerPoint presentation that they've developed for this course that I just will use a little bit of. I'm not very much of a PowerPoint type person, I'll be honest, because it's just, I'm going to say it came after my time of learning, but you know, and so I'm not so familiar with using PowerPoint, but this is quite a nice presentation anyway. Okay, all right. So when it says here the path to liberation, that's a very, you know, Buddhistic terminology, path to liberation. It sounds like it's a path to nirvana if you wanted to use an even more Buddhist terminology. But when we say liberation, we're talking about liberation from those things that cloud and stain our mind, from the afflictions. So this is the way that we can attain that state. But basically, it's a state of freedom within our own mind. If we really want a proper freedom, you know, mental freedom. We like the idea of physical freedom, don't we? Nobody wants to be stuck in a jail physically. Nobody wants to be in a society where the rules are so strictly dictated that you don't have freedom as to what you can express verbally. So we like the idea of freedom of speech, don't we? But if we want actual freedom, the real freedom that we need to attain is mental freedom. And that means freedom from those things that cloud the mind, freedom from the afflictions. So that's what we're striving for. So the 3 trainings are ethical conduct, in Sanskrit, Shila. So the point of this is the ethics is like the foundation. It's really the foundation for all the other positive practices that are to come. If we don't have ethics from a Buddhist perspective, if we don't have ethics, then we won't have a sort of solid, how can I say it? A solid basis for then generating these very important states of mind of concentration and wisdom. So this is why they're saying it sets boundaries to your actions motivated by your afflictions. So on the basis of your value system, which here is non-harmfulness, and then on top of that, benefiting others, then we set boundaries to our physical and verbal actions. And then also we work to reduce the afflictions that motivate those physical and verbal actions so that we are sitting or we're living within our value system. So that creates a much more stable mind for the trainings that are to follow. So the trainings that come on the basis of ethical conduct are concentration. So concentration is like on the basis of having reduced our afflictions, of living within our value system, then we develop this single-pointed focus of mind. So the single-pointed focus of mind is a way in which we can actually make it so those afflictions will not become manifest within our mind. So there's a whole process that is explained on how to, for instance, develop calm abiding. Is this terminology that you're all familiar with? Calm abiding, Christine, I know you all know the calm abiding. Cynthia and Shella, I'm sure you do. Everybody else, is that terminology something that you've heard before? You can do me a thumbs up if you don't want to put your microphones on.
You could give me a quick summary.
I can give you a quick summary. Okay. Quick, I don't know, quick. But yeah, okay, I can give you a quick summary. So calm abiding is this particular state of concentration that's considered to be an extremely beneficial state of concentration. So it is a state of concentration where you can abide single-pointedly on an object mentally. So not talking about any kind of like physical object, like, you know, looking at something with your eyes or listening to something with your ears. But mentally, you can place your mind on an object. So it might be, for instance, if you close your mind now and you think of, let's just go with some random object. Think of a flower. So there's an image that appears to your mind when you do that, isn't there? You know, it'll be like a generic image. We say it's a generality. It's not an actual flower. Like, you know, so there will be some kind of image that appears to your mind that's not an actual flower, but it's like a representation of a flower. So if you were through this, there's a particular process that you follow in order to develop this state of calm abiding, where you place your mind on something like a mental image. It doesn't have to be a mental image. You can also even place it on the mind itself. You can place it on other objects like, for instance, emptiness, which we'll hopefully talk about in the 4th class. But so placing the mind on this object of mind, and you can remain on that object for however long you want, in whatever way you want. And together with that, through remaining on that object for however long, like, you know, days, months, however long. And together with that, there is this particular sensation of well-being of both body and mind that comes from placing the mind in this way. And you develop this flexibility and serviceability of mind, otherwise known as pliancy, where you have this like amazing ability to place the mind. So when all of these factors come together, you have what's called calm abiding. So through placing the mind, getting to the point where you can place the mind in that kind of a way really helps to make it so the afflictions don't arise in your mind. Certainly, while you are in that concentrated state, they're not going to become manifest within your mind. So this is why it says here, it makes the afflictions dormant through this process of concentration. That, however, is not an end in and of itself. Right? It sounds like quite a nice state to develop, and it is said to be a very pleasant state to develop within your mind. The thing is, though, is if your only goal is to develop that kind of single-pointed concentration so that you don't have to deal with the problems, the suffering that comes from all these afflictions going on and all these negative thought processes, if that's your only goal, the thing is at some point that concentration is going to decline, because we're the type of being that even if you manage to sustain it for a good chunk of life, at some point you have to die. And there's the whole process of karma that comes into play. So you have to take rebirth and all of this. So that is not something that you can sustain as a being like we are now forever and ever and a day. At some point, what's going to happen is the afflictions will remanifest, because we've not gotten rid of the actual cause of the afflictions, which is ignorance. So concentration is said to be a really useful tool, but it's not the end goal in and of itself. But on the basis of having that really sharp concentration, that stable concentration, then you have a good chance to go on and develop wisdom. So wisdom is what actually gets rid of the root of all these afflictions that cloud the mind, which is ignorance. And wisdom requires that basis of concentration to really do its job well. It's like the analogy that's given is if you have like a lamp, for instance, or say a candle. So if you take a candle into a dark room and you're trying to see the pictures on the wall. So maybe it's like you've gone into a cave, for instance, right? You go into a cave and there are these beautiful paintings on the wall in the cave, and you want to be able to see those paintings on the wall. And the cave is very dark, so there's no external light, and you've got this one candle that you're trying to see with. So if you've got the candle and the seeing bit, this is like the wisdom, right? It's like the understanding, the light of the candle. So there's some wind movement. So you're trying to see the wall, the painting on the wall, but it's the candle's like flickering around. So you can't see that painting very clearly. So that is like wisdom when it's not supported by concentration, because the mind is going to be flickering around because it's like not got the stability of the concentration. Whereas when you couple the wisdom together with the concentration, that's like putting a guard around the flame of the candle. So then when you have a guard around the flame of the candle, it's no longer disturbed by the wind. And so you can then very clearly see all those pictures in the cave, the beautiful paintings. So that's like wisdom supported by concentration, then has this ability to see reality and cut through ignorance, cut through delusion, that darkness of mind. But you need these three in sequence. So the one that we're aiming to develop is the wisdom. That's the one that's actually going to cut the root of the afflictions, going to get rid of our ignorance. But that depends upon having the stability of concentration. But actually, concentration requires the basis, the foundation of ethical conduct, where you have started to make your mind stable through having these boundaries to both your physical and verbal actions, and also beginning to apply the boundaries to your mental afflictions to reduce them. Does it make sense? Yes? Okay, I hope so. All right. So, oh, well, this is what I just talked about. They work together. All right, so here we go. So ethics, setting boundaries to our afflictions and our actions. In dependence upon that, we develop this mental peace and conducive inner conditions, right? We reduce the problems of mind. We reduce our conflict with others. We reduce regret and so forth that comes from behaving in an unethical way. Then with concentration, focusing our minds, really, when we develop the kind of concentration that's mentioned here, it's not talking about any old type of concentration, but it's particularly a positive or a virtuous type of concentration. So there we make it so that the afflictions are not buffeting the mind because they're no longer manifest. And then with wisdom, I can't see this because, of course, hang on, here we go. Just have to move my thumbnails. Okay, so with wisdom, through overcoming delusion or ignorance, then you actually get rid of the afflictions entirely because you're taking out the seeds of the afflictions, the actual substantial causes, the potencies within our minds, within our mental continuum that give rise to those afflictions. Yeah. So then we have to ask, essentially, what is ethics? And from a Buddhist perspective. So the foundation is going to be, as I said before, non-harmfulness. So refraining from harm to yourself, refraining from harm to others. And then also, so Christine, you mentioned this one, which was acting in ways that are beneficial. I feel like maybe you've already gone through these PowerPoint slides yourself. I mean, this is the explanation you will have heard many times, of course. And then this is also an interesting point, isn't it? So with ethics, it's not about just doing what makes, other people think is going to make them happy, but it's actually using wisdom to make sure that we're acting in ways that accord with reality, with realities, with the explanation of reality in terms of what actually brings about happiness and what brings about suffering. So like, for instance, if you had, for instance, a friend who was really addicted to alcohol, and what they're asking for you is to, can you give them some money so that they can go and buy some more alcohol? If you say no, chances are they'll be angry with you, right? I mean, maybe not. If you say yes, they'll maybe be happy with you temporarily, but what does that do long term?
It causes them more suffering.
Causes more suffering in the long term, doesn't it?
Yes,
It doesn't help either of you.
It doesn't help either of you. I mean, addiction is a very complex matter. So, I feel like I've oversimplified it with this example, but it's just to give you an idea. You could also say, for instance, so if you're maintaining a code of conduct that, like an ethical code of conduct that is like a Buddhist code of conduct, right? Another example might be, for instance, like if you have in your house, you have a problem with cockroaches, right? Where I live in Queensland, it's not possible to live in a house without a cockroach, honestly. It's like subtropical. They go everywhere. They'll come inside. There's nothing you can do to actually completely stop them from coming inside. So what most people do is they'll put out baits for cockroaches. That's the general way of going about things here. But if you're abiding by a Buddhist ethical code of conduct, then what you have to think is like, okay, so if I put out bait for cockroaches, or when I see a cockroach, I kill it, what is that actually doing? You know, what is my action in that case? In that case, I'm creating harm for another sentient being. So this really links up with the understanding that, you know, comes from thinking about karmic cause and effect, you know. So in terms of the Buddhist presentation of cause and effect, we think beyond just the scope of this life. And we think in terms of this life and future lives, you know, and which go for endlessly, right? We can say beginninglessly. What do we say endlessly? Probably not endlessly. Eventually, we won't have life in cyclic existence, of course, because we'll be able to uproot all our afflictions and attain this state of liberation eventually. But so what we think of is like we do with just a general external cause and effect. Any cause is going to give rise to an effect. Every effect comes from a particular cause. So if I am to harm a sentient being, then that means that is going to act as a cause for something which is of a similar type later. So since the cause is negative, the result also will be negative. This is the Buddhist principle of karmic cause and effect. Just like, you know, in external cause and effect, it's like if you have a particular result, the cause, the main cause that it came from, what we call the substantial cause, has to be of a similar type to that thing. If you wanted, for instance, I'm sure I've talked about this in one of my previous classes. So here I've got a ceramic cup. So that ceramic cup, we'd say its main substantial cause would be some kind of like, what would we say, clay or that kind of organic earthen material. Does anybody
Pottery,
know?
porcelain,
Porcelain?
pottery, porcelain. I don't know.
Pottery, porcelain. Yeah, so it's going to be that kind of like, I should have used a different example where I knew exactly what the substantial cause was for this. Let's say that it's going to be some kind of like clay earthen material. It's not plastic, is it? You can't get an earthenware cup, a ceramic cup from plastic. No matter how hard you try, it's not possible. Likewise, you can't get this ceramic cup from metal. Doesn't matter how much metal you have, how much you fashion it into the shape of a cup. From that metal, you will never end up with a ceramic cup. You might end up with a metal cup, but you won't end up with a ceramic cup. So the principle here is demonstrating, you know, the need for consistency between a substantial cause, the main cause of the thing, and the result. So the thing that became the result has to be of a similar type to it. So in Buddhism, we apply the same principle to internal cause and result. So internal cause and result, meaning the causes that you accumulate through your actions, through your physical, verbal, and mental actions, all of those causes will give rise to results. And those results will be of similar type to those causes. So in that case, we're talking more in the sense of what you experience yourself as a result of the causes or the actions that you have done yourself. So it's not like through an action that you yourself have performed of like killing a cockroach. It's not as though that will act as a cause for the establishment of, I don't know, you coming across a snake in the road or something like that. It's not that. It's referring to through yourself engaging in an action of, for instance, killing a cockroach, then you yourself, in dependence upon that harmful action, will experience some kind of negative result of suffering in the future. This is the general principle. Is that something that's clear to everybody, that general principle? I mean, whether you accept it or not, that's another matter. That's entirely up, you know, up to you to think about and decide for yourselves. But, you know, I'm just presenting the way it's presented in Buddhism. Is that clear? Stefan, is that clear for you?
It's two factors, the middle age and then the time of night.
I'm not sure I quite follow.
The
Could
the middle age, forgetting and not grasping sometimes, and then the time of night. Like, in other words, my physical condition to understand sometimes at this time of the night when something has a lot of angles to it, it's harder to grasp than if you caught me in the middle of the day right after breakfast. So it's not what your presentation is. What time is it out there by you, Annie, by the way?
for me,
Yeah.
it's like 12:15, just past noon.
Noon. Okay. Yes. You're on the other side of that watch that time. So yeah, it's but what I find is if something's piece by piece and broken down in a slow way, I don't know. I always like it that like that anyway. I call it piling up. You go to philosophy things and they just read and read, but there's something that got you. And by the time they finished reading, there was three things, but you lost the grasp because it was so much piled up. I call it.
Yeah, I can understand that and also totally get the time thing. Usually, when I teach here in Australia to the Australian group, I'm teaching like at 6 o'clock at night. So it goes from 6 till 7:30. And by the time we get to 7:30 at night, I can see everybody's faces is like, and I can totally get it. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to maintain focus after a long day. So I do appreciate it. It's like there's merit to doing the best that we can, I think. And it's like that. It's like rain on a stone, isn't it? Gradually, the stone gets smoothed by the rain, and gradually over time, it comes to work with your mind so that eventually you can absorb it. I don't think that the analogy doesn't work so well with rain and stone and absorbing, but anyway, yeah. So whatever you've understood from that explanation I just gave, don't worry if you didn't get all of it. I suppose the main thing to retain here is that the ethical principles of Buddhism is founded on the basis of the Buddhist presentation of karmic cause and effect, where an effect that you experience, whether it be a good effect, generally is going to be happiness, or it's going to be a bad effect, which will be suffering. We say that that effect has to have come from a cause that is of concordant or similar type. Just like if you want a metal cup, that's a result that you need in order to make a metal cup, you have to have metal. Or if you want a wooden table, you have to start with wood. In dependence upon that wood, those planks of wood, you can make a wooden table. In dependence upon the metal, you can make a metal cup. So likewise, if you want happiness, then you have to look at what are the causes for happiness, not the external causes, the internal causes, the causes that you have control over. And Buddhism says that that means those causes for a result of happiness will be something that is compatible with happiness. So positive causes, that means positive actions of body, speech, and mind. With experience of suffering, what are the compatible causes that lead to that, substantial causes specifically? They're going to be of compatible type. So negative actions of body, speech, and mind. So this is looking at how it relates to ourselves. So these other things that we come across in our life that we are happy about, those are conditions for these experiences of happiness and suffering to arise, but they are not the main substantial causes. And the reason why we know that's the case is because you can have a different response to the same external condition. So, for instance, you might have somebody who says something very critical of you to you, right? So it might be saying, you're not doing a good job, right, with your work. So, for example, somebody said to me, you haven't explained that very well, right? You haven't explained this thing on karma, you haven't explained it very well. I don't understand it. Right. So that's a critical thing that's been said. So there's probably lots of ways I could react to that, but let's take the two main ways I might react to that. So one is I might feel like my pride might get all worked up and I'd be like, hey, I've been teaching for ages. What are you talking about? I know how to explain karmic cause and effect. Yeah, this is something that I could do. Probably would potentially do. You never know. I hope not, but you don't know what's going to happen in your mind, right? So there could be this pride that comes up. Yeah, I've been a nun for quite a while. I do understand the principles. I know how to explain stuff. And on dependence upon that way of thinking, then those words act as a condition for me to experience suffering. Yeah, because in my mind becomes unhappy. In hearing those words, my mind has become unhappy, but it's really become unhappy through this whole process also of having a negative way of thinking of that particular thing that's been said. Another way would be like, oh, actually, I'm really pleased that this person has said that because I wasn't aware that I hadn't explained it very well. And my intention is to try and benefit, to explain as accurately as I can the things that I have learned from my teachers that have benefited me and that I can see have logic behind them. And, whoever's listening is interested in hearing about that. So, oh, I haven't explained it well. That's really good that that's being pointed out to me because, then I can do better. Now I can explain better. I can give a clearer explanation. That's great. I'm so pleased that this person has pointed out that I haven't explained karmic cause and effect well. So there's actually, in that point, there'll be a bit of happiness that has arisen from my mind because I don't want it to be the case that I haven't explained it well. And then, maybe the other person's not understood or gotten a wrong understanding. So now I've been given an opportunity to clarify what I've done, to explain it better. The words are the same. My reaction is different. So that indicates that it's not the words that are the substantial cause for my own happiness or my own suffering. Because if it were the words themselves, then it wouldn't matter what the way I thought about those words. I would always experience only happiness, or I'd always only experience suffering as a result. So what it indicates is actually the substantial cause that becomes the happiness or that becomes the suffering that I experience, that is within my own mental continuum. Yeah. So this is why in Buddhism we say that these experiences of happiness or suffering, those causes for those things are things that you create yourself. You are the master of your own happiness and suffering. You are your own protector because you are the one who can create the causes for your own happiness and can stop creating the causes for your own suffering. You are the one that determines, like you are the creator of your own existence, essentially. There's nobody else who creates it for you. You're the one who creates it. So that gives you really great opportunity. It means that it is in your own hand what you do. It doesn't mean that it's easy, therefore, but it does mean that you have the potential to do something about this. If you want to experience greater happiness, create more causes for the happiness. If you want to experience less suffering, employ the methods to stop creating the causes for your own suffering. Does that make sense? Have I explained karmic cause and effect well? Don't say yes just because you don't want me to be upset.
I don't want to be the only one. then you say, well, does anybody else? You know,
I have a feeling that
yeah.
everybody is likewise like you,
Who act-
Stefan, tired for a Sunday night, I'm guessing. Yeah. And also I know, some of you have had a very long day as well. So I do appreciate that.
Sometimes that's good because it disarms you. All the spunk is gone, and you're sitting there, and then it just comes to you without all the guards and the inflictions and various things. I notice with some people when I'm pointing something out to them, an idea, I'm giving them an idea or how I saw something, but they take it as a personal affront. So that they're attached to who they are, and they don't want to appear to be somebody that might not have been totally abreast of what they were talking about, put it that way. And I noticed that, but I welcome when somebody could enlighten me on something because it's only going to polish up my own light. I look at it totally differently. If they're malicious and they're just trying to uh, be nasty, that's one thing, if that's propelling it. But if they're sincerely sharing what they're what they're what's being transmitted, and I really like that because I can't find out for myself sometimes because I'm my own fan. I need somebody to say it, but I welcome it right away. And in fact, I thank them. And people they get thrown off by that because they automatically think that they're slighting you. But I don't feel slighted.
Well, that's right. And actually, it doesn't matter what the intention of another person is. In fact, we can take whatever comes our way as a way to improve our own minds, to benefit our own minds. It doesn't mean we have to accept all criticism as being valid that comes our way, because it's possible that the criticism is not valid. But we can use our own wisdom and our own understanding to differentiate between, is that correct? Is that not correct? And to at least have a mind that's open to checking, that's the way that we can improve, really. It's one of the ways that we can improve, having that kind of open mind. Whereas pride is something that closes down your mind because you think that you're right and you already know, nobody else knows, right? So there's actually a saying that the dewdrops of qualities do not collect on the mountain peaks of pride, which I think is very true, because when you have that pride, it doesn't matter. It could be like the Dalai Lama who gives you advice, or a little bit of supportive, constructive criticism, and you couldn't hear it because of your pride. How sad would that be? So having that mind that's open, and also having the wisdom to be able to check, is this accurate? Is this not accurate? And you take on the bits that are accurate and you see what you can do to transform and improve your own mind, your own way of being. Very valuable. So within the framework of what we're talking about here, essentially ethics in Buddhism gives us a framework to improve our accumulation of causes for happiness and stopping the causes for harm. So I see we're at the end of our class, but just see. So this is actually what I thought was a very nice way of presenting, coming back to here, presenting the ethical framework from a Buddhist perspective that Robert Thurman, maybe many of you have heard the name before. So usually the way that ethics is presented in Buddhism is like, Christine, as you said at the start, to avoid killing, to avoid stealing, to avoid sexual misconduct and so forth. And here, Bob Thurman, he's added in like the bit of what to do instead, which I think is actually really nice. So all those things that are harmful actions are the ones that we want to abandon, and the things that are beneficial actions are the ones that we want to adopt. So resolving not to kill, but instead to save life. Not to steal, but to be generous. Not to harm sexually, but to only benefit. Not to lie, but to speak the truth. I mean, when we say not to lie, but to speak the truth, you also have to use wisdom with that one too, right? Because not lying, okay, one thing, But is speaking the truth always a beneficial action? I don't think that it is in all circumstances. Like, for instance, if somebody said to you, well, no, like say you could see a fault in somebody else, right? You can see that somebody else has a fault. And wanting to cause harm to that other person, you point out that fault to them. So whether or not that person actually takes on your criticism as beneficial or not is one thing, but you yourself have already done something that harms yourself because you have generated a harmful intent towards a person and then spoken truth on the basis of that harmful intent. So you've used the idea of speaking truth to harm another person. There was no need, right? There was no need to speak that truth. It was just done out of spite, essentially. That's a harmful action. So we have to, put a little asterisk next to speak the truth. It's like speak the truth, when appropriate and with a kind heart. That's what it means there. So not to backbite, but to reconcile. That means to not be divisive. So not be divisive, not try and separate people who are close or further separate people who are already not getting along, but actually try and create harmony. Not to chatter, but to speak meaningfully. So to try and avoid that idle gossip, but to use your speech for useful things, for things that have a point. Not to covet, but to be generous. Not to hate or not to have ill will, but to have love. So loving kindness, that intention to benefit, extremely important. Not to speak harshly, but to speak sweetly. Not to speak appropriately, we can say. And not to hold unrealistic or wrong views, but actually ones that accord with reality. So I think it's quite a nice approach. Yeah. So it's through this living a life that is guided by this sense of ethics that we can develop these qualities within ourselves that act as a foundation for the concentration and wisdom that are to come. So developing especially this inner peace, reducing regret. Also, because we've started to put some boundaries on our physical and verbal and mental actions, our mind becomes calmer. Reverses our habituation towards just following those afflictions, and it decreases conflict with ourselves and others. So generally creates a more harmonious environment or a harmonious life for ourselves. Okay, so it's really just a very brief presentation of ethics, and perhaps we'll go into a little bit more next week and then start to talk about concentration as well. But do you have any final questions, comments, ideas, statements, or is it just like, no, we're at the end of a Sunday, I'm really tired, I'm sorry, I don't have anything to say? Is it more like that? Shella, have I got it spot on for you?
You
Yes,
said you
you
had a little bit
absolutely
on the
do.
spirit.
I'm sorry.
You said you had a little bit on the spirit.
I do have a bit on the spirit.
Just a little
Yes.
bit.
Can we hold it off for next week or
Okay.
the week
All
after?
right.
Is it
No,
all
no,
right?
no. Okay. Okay.
Okay, because it does relate, I feel, to especially the fourth class on wisdom. And so, yeah, maybe we can talk about it there and see if it all works in that context.
Cool.
Yeah.
I try to
Okay.
remember whenever I'm pointing a finger and pointing my finger and shaking at somebody, I look at my hand and it's 3 pointing back at me. And those are the ones I should be concerned with.
That's right. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent way of thinking. That's right. Always looking back at our own mind is the
Mhm.
best way to go. Yeah. We can't change other people, really, but we can change ourselves. We can't, we can't sort of like change all the external things that we're going to come across in life. That's going to happen. We're going to come across good things and bad things. Nice speech, bad speech, beautiful people and people who maybe have ill intent in their hearts, right? So we can't change all of that, but what we can change, we have some capacity to do something about, is our own mind and our own reactions. So that's where we need to start.
Power of example.
Yeah, that's right.
Walk in the walk and not even talking.
I think it should not be underestimated how much it does affect and it does benefit others just by embodying the values that you see as being important, you know, which like hopefully is similar in some respects, if not in all respects, to these ones that are presented in Buddhism, which is like at the basis, non-harmfulness. On the top of that, we can act to benefit. Excellent. That's really excellent. If you live a life where you try and cultivate that intention to benefit as much as possible. And, you know, I love what you said, Christine, about starting the day with that intention, that thought to benefit others. You know, that's an excellent thing to do, to set the motivation right at the start of the day. You're more likely to remember it throughout the day. Then that is a great way to live your life. You know, that's something that we can get to the end of our lives and be happy about if we've done the best that we can to benefit others. So it's an excellent ethical guideline. And also a great way to reduce our own affliction cloudiness of our mental continuum. I don't know, that's not a word, but you know, yeah, the cloudiness of our mind. All right, well, let's leave it there for today. So just taking a moment to think that whatever positive causes that we've created through our study today, through our discussions, and through the positive motivation that we've brought to the class, may it benefit not just myself, may it help, of course, for me to reduce the afflictions of my own mind, but also may it benefit all other sentient beings. Okay. Thank you much. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'll see you hopefully all again next week.
Thank you.